You're listening to the Future Tech Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Future technologies such as artificial intelligence, stem cells, 3D printing, gene editing, Bitcoin, blockchain, the microbiome, quantum computing, virtual reality, and exploring space are much closer than you might think. In fact, many early versions of these technologies are in play right now, and the companies that are using these technologies are the focus of this podcast. My goal for you, the listener, is to learn from these podcasts. You may very well learn something that may change the course of your life for the better, steer you towards a new career, or give you insight into addressing a thorny medical problem. Remember, this podcast and its content is informational in nature only. No medical, tax, legal, financial, or psychological advice is being given. If you've enjoyed the podcast, please listen, subscribe, like, and tell your friends about it. Thank you. Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Future Tech Podcast. My guest today is Csathy. He's the founder of CREATV Media, and he's also the author of Fearless Media. So, Peter, thank you for coming.
Yeah, great to be on. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so tell me about CREATV Media. What's the premise behind it, and what's the uniqueness of it?
My firm is a media entertainment and tech business advisory development and investment firm. So we work with companies that are doing the most innovative things in the tech transform world of media and entertainment. And so that could be in the video side, music, VR, AR, so a lot of immersive work, as well as out-of-home entertainment experiential. And the kinds of things that we frequently do is we're connectors, we're deal makers, and we're opportunity spotters.
Huh. Well, you must be in front of the most, I guess the best word is cool, the most coolest technology out there, I would guess, right?
Well, that's the goal. The goal is absolutely to do that. And I'm fortunate to have access to a lot of very interesting things. And part of it comes from just the fact that I've been in the media and entertainment and tech world for so long. And so I've built up an interesting network across those years. And so there's many opportunities are introduced to me, but I'm also try to keep my ears really close to the ground because I've been a serial entrepreneur myself. So I know how it is to build and run and raise capital for and exit some of the leading or some real bleeding edge media tech companies. And I'll just give you a couple examples. On the music side, I was president of Music Match, which was really the first Spotify. We were the first ones that really created the on-demand music streaming game back in the day. This was back 2002, and we sold to Yahoo for $160 million. So we were real pioneers, well ahead of the time when we have subscription streaming, of course. And then I became CEO of a company that was the leader in consumer video chat before anybody believed that there would be such a market. So it was before FaceTime and Skype video and all those things. And we did believe, our investors believed, and we were able to have a nice exit, and we sold to Logitech. And so those are a couple examples of where I kind of put my money where my mouth is, where I'm just intellectually interested where the technology has transformed the media and entertainment space. And I've been fortunate to work with some great teams to be real innovators, hopefully pushing it along the way.
Okay. Well, that's some pretty easy and sensible questions then. So what's the most amazing and coolest stuff that's up and coming that you can talk about that you've seen?
Well, it's interesting that I'm spending a lot of my time in the immersive world right now. But immersive is not just virtual reality and being behind a headset or a wearable of some kind. It's immersive is also out-of-home entertainment that can be driven by VR-driven experiences. Where, like, there's a company that I'm working with called Typhon, Tyff Frank On, out of Japan, where they operate location-based entertainment centers in Tokyo and are coming soon to the U.S., where you can actually, you're wearing a VR headset, but you're able to walk freely, untethered around in a physical environment. So it's a very social experience with your friends, and you feel like you're in a haunted house and you're participating in it and doing that. But like, that's immersive, taking it off just your insular kind of solo experience and bringing it out in the field. And then another very interesting immersive opportunity that I see is I'm chairman of a company called Vortex, Vortex, Immersive Media, and they produce dome experiences, dome-fueled experiences. So you can imagine being in a dome with your friends where you have the music surrounding you and you have visuals in 360 degrees all enveloping you, and it's very much a three-dimensional virtual reality-ish kind of experience, but without the wearable. And I believe that's
cool.
Like the out-of-home, I almost think that even though I'm a digital media guy, there's a craving for the non-digital. There's a craving for the being in the physical environments, real social interaction, and I believe in that. And so I'm spending a fair amount of my time in that world now, but how technology can maximize the impact offline. So it's like online or virtual really fuels and accelerates the impact of the offline physical sort of world and social interaction. I think there's a lot to be done there.
Yeah, that seems more of like an augmented reality play. But I guess for instance, I like to go to escape rooms with my kids.
Yeah.
And that's they'll augment it sometimes with TV screens and magnetic locks and things like that. So it's there is some technology there, but the physical is super important, and it's really cool. And I like your idea of it's not your idea, but the dome entertainment idea. It feels like as if I had a private showing at a planetarium, for instance, or an IMAX theater with friends. So I can see that would be a really cool experience too.
Yeah, it's interesting that I was talking to somebody about this just earlier today, that I live experiences. That's how I spend my time with my families. We go to music festivals. We try to do things that are very engaging that way. And I've gone to Coachella for 10 years now straight. And the kids who go to Coachella, it's a very young audience. They see everything. They're immersed in all kinds of technology. Not much impresses the kids because they're digital natives. They see everything. But what was really interesting to me, there was a dome experience at Coachella, which was it was sophisticated, but not nearly as much as it can be. Yet the kids walked in who are not impressed with anything, and they walked out with just amazed by what they experienced. And so that's an example of like a greenfield opportunity, I believe. And just getting to your escape room concept, one of the things I really thought about, and I really believe this will be happening. I don't know anybody doing it yet, but I think somebody should do it. Maybe you and I should set it up. But where just like many people have home theaters, you can imagine a situation or a future in the not too distant future where you have your own escape room, essentially, where it's LEDs lining every single wall, and you can do your yoga, you can do your relaxation, you can do your spiritual sort of introspection by dialing in Tibet or dialing in and being on top of Kilimanjaro or something like that. And you feel like you're absolutely immersed in that physical environment that you can dial in at any point in time. I think that's a really interesting opportunity.
Well, years ago, and I guess it doesn't matter saying it publicly, but I thought of a concept, I call it like recreation, where you would go with like your family and you'd pay to have experiences in like 3 or 4 different rooms. And one might be a beach, like a really hot room where it's like a beach with water. Another one you can go throw snowballs. Another one you can go and, play games. And, instead of like laser tag, it would be rooms with all these different experiences. So let's say you're in a cold climate. It would be really cool to be able to pay and all of a sudden be at like a beach environment or vice versa.
Yeah.
So I could see how these experiences would be super cool for people.
Absolutely. I think that's exactly right. And, it's interesting that you can get real physiological impact by the technology that you're experiencing too. So like on the heat side or the cold side that you were talking about, I'll give you kind of an out there example. I forgot the name of the company. It might be Pious, Pious, and I have nothing to do with them, but I write about them in my Fearless Media book. There's a chapter where I talk about the physiological impacts of immersive technology. And in that particular case, which is an amazing use case, this company provides technology to hospitals that are addressing like children burn victims, and they're immersing the kids just with a headset on. They're in a snow environment, an actual snow environment, and because of that, because of the power that has on the brain that they're immersed in a snow environment, the physiological impacts are very real, and they're akin to the same kind of pain reduction that these kids would have if they were under the influence of opiates that are used to address their pain management. So
that's amazing.
It's really cool stuff. And these are things that are happening now and in such the early stages still.
Huh. So it sounds like the new is to keep the physical aspects of entertainment as much as possible, or at least some of them, and then use technology to make this hybrid environment that's more exciting and more flexible than ever before.
Well, that's certainly one theme that I talk about and write about a lot, and I'm living it. So I'm spending a fair amount of my time in those kind of environments because I really believe in that. But there's certainly some of the other main themes that I write about a lot and I just ponder a lot are like the democratization of creating interactive stories or interactive experiences. So just like back in the day, YouTube really democratized the ability for any of us to create and publish videos to the world. I'm working with a company called Metaverse, META Verse, and I think the URL is gometa.io. But the person who's the CEO of that company, his name is Dmitry Shapiro. He actually created YouTube before YouTube, but got funded second. And his was the biggest competitor to YouTube, which you may recall, a company called VEOH, VEOH, and they were massive back in the day. Well, what Dmitry has done now, he's created a company that does the same thing for interactive stories. So that means creating games or AR experiences, and you don't have to be a software engineer anymore. It's democratized where any of us can easily create and share those kinds of things. So I think that's really interesting in a mobile-driven world where, again, it's the AR component is semi-immersive and it relates to the immersive. But I also believe, I spend a lot of my time pondering the video world and pondering the music world and how that's transformed. And so just today, I wrote a post on LinkedIn about Netflix and on the video side and how Netflix is seemingly invincible. But unlike the vast majority of people, I'm kind of a bear when it comes to Netflix and have been for many years. And I won't get into all the reasons why, but certainly Apple and Disney and Warner Media are coming out with their own quote unquote Netflix killers this year to join Amazon. So I think Netflix, like never before, will be challenged in 2019. And so that's a theme that I in this increasingly over the top video world, that's a theme that I write about and talk about a lot.
Well, when it comes to video, again, I think back to when I was a kid. I remember there was like choose your own adventure books, and you'd be in the book and it would say, all right, there's a dragon in front of you. If you want to fight it, go to page 34. If you want to run, go to page 40. So why can't they do that, for instance, with movies where people will go to a movie and, maybe they'll have like, instead of 3D glasses, some other kind of glasses where they're seeing certain parts of the movie that offers them a choice, and they can, I guess, on the fly change how the movie will go based on their taste.
Yeah, absolutely. And completely agreed. And that's been a dream of Hollywood or a lot of creators for quite some time. Certainly a dream rather than a real promise, because I don't think there's been anything very successful to date that's given the audience the ability to change the story. But as hot off the presses, it's funny you say that, because of course Black Mirror on Netflix just had the debut of Bandersnatch, which is one of the first major interactive movie/television experiences ever distributed at a mass scale. And that's one where this new episode that just came out, I think it's like 2 days ago, the Netflix user has choices throughout the experience where they decide they decide a certain route to where the story is going. So the story can branch in multiple ways, they choose a route, and then the story changes because of that. So what Netflix had to do is they created all these different iterations of a story, and then depending on which path the user takes, they'll have a different experience. Yours will be different than mine, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a major, like, hot off the presses moment.
Yeah, I was going to say, in a Netflix environment or at home, it's much easier to control that stuff. Let's say when you film stuff, you have a lot of B-roll, you have a lot of extra, and all that seems to get thrown away. Maybe you got director's cut, but what they could do is, let's say there's a show that adults are going to watch and kids are going to watch. They could have a kid-friendly path through the show that cuts out images, let's say, of some of the violence or sex scenes, and they can still get the story, but they won't see some of the details that an adult would see, or if someone doesn't like horror movies, or they can go in a completely different story arc at certain points in the story. So I think there's a lot that could be done, that should be done.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And then on the kind of the more, and that is, it is much easier to do this branching and creating content where the user decides, when it's a solo experience where they can make the individual decision while they're watching their Netflix show. It is a very different sort of ballgame when you're in a communal environment like a movie theater or something like that, and you can collectively influence in a seamless kind of fashion rather than some wonky kind of way. And one of the companies I mentioned earlier, the Dome company, Vortex Immersive Media, they have a very interesting vision of how the audience can influence the actual visuals that are going on through, I don't want to misstate it because this is past my pay grade, but through the thinking, the I don't know if it's the energy in the room or it's the actual, somehow there's a way through almost like telepathy collectively that changes the overall experience depending on the mood or the thoughts in the room. So that is a dream that probably isn't too far off, by the way.
That's cool. Well, what other really interesting experiences or new initiatives you see coming, even if they're not here yet, but they're close?
Well, I certainly think that we're talking about a lot of these experiences that we've discussed are content fueled, and so that requires intellectual property, that requires stories, it requires characters, it requires creativity in that kind of way. So the technology is the enabler of it, but it's the storytelling. So it's kind of like, it goes back to the beginnings of time where storytelling was at the center of everything. And storytelling, I'm still very much a content is king guy, from my days and being in the media and entertainment world. And I certainly think that the value of IP, of creation, and of licensing that IP is a big theme and becoming a bigger theme. And so one of the areas that I'm very excited about and I'm working pretty deeply in is in music publishing, as an example. So I mentioned I'm a deal guy as well as past entrepreneur and connector. And so one of my recent deals was I worked with a major entertainment company to acquire the publishing catalog for Count Basie, the legendary jazz artist. And that will reinvent and revitalize Count Basie's great music and great brand to an entirely new audience. That's the possibilities here through some of the things we're talking about. And, immersive technology or things that just new ways to commercialize great rights. And I'm working on a number of other major music publishing deals right now. So that's exciting for me because it's about taking this great music and reimagining it, reinventing it, and also bringing these great artists back and making them relevant again to a new generation. So that's cool stuff.
Would you be able to, probably in the Dome experience, could you recreate famous concerts of old and get somewhat close to the actual experience for people? I think that would be, people would love that. Older people that went to that concert, and then young people that never got to experience the concert,
Oh, yeah, completely. In fact, I can't mention who they are, but there's a very iconic early 80s band that was always pretty ahead of its time when it came to an immersive vision. And I've been talking to them about doing an immersive Dome concert experience, where the visuals would be at a level never before possible through that kind of technology, yet the music is being played live at the same time. So a dome or any of these things really doesn't necessarily mean that you're divorced from the live part, the live performance part too. It just further, it's like a deeper, a deeper enhancement of them. And if there's, for anybody who's listening, I'll give you an example, like a concrete example you can look up on YouTube. So again, on Vortex, the company I mentioned, if you just go to their website, which I think is vortexdomes.com, you'll see an example of a concert with Childish Gambino, the great contemporary music artist in pop music, where he performed within a dome environment in the Joshua Tree Desert, where you had all these projections all around you, but it was a live concert within this thing. And you can imagine doing that with any one of these iconic artists, and bringing even those who have passed away, you can bring them to life in, whether it's projected, but also, I'm interacting with holographic companies too, and holographic technology was already a big deal a few years ago at Coachella when Tupac came back on stage in the form of a hologram. But you can imagine how far that holographic technology has gone in those 6 years or 7 years since that happened. And I think that's exciting too.
That's cool. Well, it sounds like it would be cool if you were someone's dad. You'd take your family to all these experiences. So you'd be a fun person to hang out with, it sounds like.
Well, here's another one. I mean, and I was talking about this with my kids and my wife the other day, where are you a Star Wars guy?
Yeah, I like Star Wars, Star Trek.
Okay.
All that stuff,
I forgot which one. It might have been the last one, where Carrie Fisher, of course, Princess Leia, she had died.
Yeah.
But yet she still had an extended role in the latest Star Wars because they were able to take her image and through CGI create her, and if she felt like she was real, like a real live actor. And you can imagine that's kind of, I'm not going to say gimmicky, but it's real. It's happening real now, and it's already convincing. We're not going to be too far off where, rather than having to hire actors for tens and 20 millions of dollars, that you'll be able to license their image. Perhaps the actor or actress gets to, sit on a beach someplace, sipping their cocktails, not having to put in the time to do anything, yet they're still collecting royalties. But it's still more cost effective for the studio to just take their image and create a story that's where they're acting, even though they're not. The
ultimate stunt double. And another consequence from that would be, let's say there's a movie that people like, and there's certain actors that play the people in the movie. Eventually, as the technology gets good enough, you could choose who you want to act in that role and overlay that person's face on that character and have them act it, which is crazy.
Completely. And I'll give you another just kind of a cost-efficient, data-driven what's happening now in Hollywood, or at least with the new Hollywood, where you're seeing companies like, I'll throw out one that I'm not working with them, but I think they're really cool. It's a company that's in the called Crypt TV, like a crypt. So Crypt TV, and it's a new media company focused on the horror genre. And they start with a character, or they start with a very short, like mini-sode that is a mobile-driven experience, and then they can test to see how the audience reacts to that. Some of their characters are forgotten, nobody cares, but there are some that somehow get some penetration with the audience, and so they can then take that character and expand the storyline and invest more money into it to have a longer-form experience, or possibly a television show or movie, and have a much better sense of whether that will be successful and spending their money in an efficient, effective way, and having stronger ROI because they already know that they have a built-in audience that will come and experience it. So I think that this experimentation that is enabled through data-driven, the new data-driven models, I think that's something that these new media companies that I spend a fair amount of time with, that's what they're doing. And I think old Hollywood needs to understand that and see how they're just being outclassed right now because they're still going very much the subjective way.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It seems like, I guess, the Blacklist on steroids. I just saw a TED Talk about the Blacklist and how it was kind of an amalgamation of what producers that see scripts liked, and that changed how movies are made. But this incorporates far more data and testing with actual viewers and, the technology. I mean, you could really make customized type content and experiences.
Absolutely. So, these are all really exciting things. There's so many things that are going on, and I really do try to tackle a lot of the things we're discussing and a lot more in my new book. And so hopefully that's both informative and entertaining, and it's certainly not meant just for industry insiders. It's meant for anybody who's interested in these kinds of things that we're talking about. Yeah,
very cool. So we haven't talked much about your investment style, so maybe just a little bit on that. What do you look for when you look at these companies? Because I can see it will be tricky, like even if a company has a great idea, if they don't come out at the right time, the idea may not go anywhere, or maybe it's not right for the market, or maybe there's a competitor that for some reason just wins the attention over them. So it just seems like it would be super tricky for you to make investments that would pay off. Yeah, investing is always, whether it's your time, because a lot of my investment is just pure time. Like we all have limited time, so where are you going to put your energies? That's a big bet. You got to love what you do. That's ultimately on the time part. I got to be a real believer that it's just fun, it's interesting. We're pushing the envelope, innovating, that kind of stuff. But then from a monetary standpoint too, there's all these different choices, and you're right. There are so many great stories out there. There's so much great innovation. And as we know, the best doesn't necessarily win. So it's a question, a lot of it depends on who's associated with the company. How does it rise above the din? And so one of the things that hopefully I can add as an investor, and I'm an early stage investor, I get in very early, seed stage, pre-seed stage. One of the things that hopefully I can optimize the chances of that company's success as well as my own success accordingly is that I can be an active investor. So the things that we're talking about, the access that I have, the experiences I have, hopefully can be helpful to better the chances for those companies. Because again, let's just say there's, an opportunity. Let's say there's a company out there doing something, whatever that may be. You can bet that it's not the only company out in the world that's doing that sort of thing. So, if you have these, let's say 10 in one particular very niche area, one can have much better technology than the others, but another one of the 10 may win because of the kinds of things like connections and access and geolocation, location of where they're based and all those sorts of things. So I invest in the kinds of areas that we're talking about, like immersive, like video, like augmented reality, but I do it with companies that I believe I can add unique value to, and that I believe have a management team that is, they don't necessarily have to be proven, because innovation frequently happens by new timers, but I need to believe that they have a unique vision, and they also have the unique traits that entrepreneurs need to be successful, which is, never say die, tenacity, great team, all those kinds of things. Okay, makes sense. Well, very good, Peter. So what are some resources for listeners where they could find out more? Well, so I do think that, my new book, which you can find on Amazon, Fearless Media, and it's Fearless Media, Survival of the Fittest in today's Media 2.0 world. And I call it Media 2.0 because it's the tech-infused world of media and entertainment. So I think that book gives a nice overview of all the different areas that we're talking about. I also interview over 30 leaders in and around the space. So, and I give my predictions for this year and beyond of where the technology is going. So that's a resource that's easy to find. And then otherwise, there are, I do my writing on a regular basis. Like I published that post today on LinkedIn under my name, of course, my profile. And my last name is spelled kind of funny, but although my last name's Csathy, it's spelled like Csathy. So it's Peter, C like cat, S like Sam, A-T-H like Harry, Y.
and you can look at my LinkedIn profile and you'll see a bunch of my musings there. And then I think some resources. I think TechCrunch does a good job in covering some of these things we're talking about. I think maybe surprisingly, Variety, the media and entertainment publication, they do an increasingly good job on the technology side too. So a lot of the areas that we're talking about will be covered in Variety. I think that's a good resource. And then obviously following podcasts like yours. That's how you stay fresh.
Excellent. Well, Peter, this has been really fun, really cool, and it's exciting, and I appreciate you coming on the podcast.
No, I really enjoyed being part of it, and it is fun to talk about these things.
You're listening to the Future Tech Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Future technologies such as artificial intelligence, stem cells, 3D printing, gene editing, Bitcoin, blockchain, the microbiome, quantum computing, virtual reality, and exploring space are much closer than you might think. In fact, many early versions of these technologies are in play right now, and the companies that are using these technologies are the focus of this podcast. My goal for you, the listener, is to learn from these podcasts. You may very well learn something that may change the course of your life for the better, steer you towards a new career, or give you insight into addressing a thorny medical problem. Remember, this podcast and its content is informational in nature only. No medical, tax, legal, financial, or psychological advice is being given. If you've enjoyed the podcast, please listen, subscribe, like, and tell your friends about it. Thank you.